Now we're on.
Okay. Let's pray. Oh, kind and gracious Heavenly Yah, I thank you for this wonderful meeting of Sukkot that we've been having all week long. Father Yah, I pray that Brother Eric will continue teaching this to us and bringing out the Paleo Hebrew that you have created. And let it speak to us, Father, and to our hearts and minds to learn more about this through it. And I pray that you would just help us apply this to our lives and to study it and to get a deeper relationship with you, Father. Father, I just want to thank you and please lead, direct, and guide Eric as he continues with his teaching. And I ask these things in the name of Yahshua. Amen.
Amen.
Now what? What's his name right now?
Paul Wilbur,
Yes.
Days of Elijah. What was the phrase? Did he say, out of Mount Zion, salvation comes? Is that what he said?
Out of Zion's hills.
Out of Zion's hills. Out of Zion's hills. Hills could be, well, I'd have to look that up. There's a tel is a type of a hill. That's Tet Lamed. Anyway, you ever heard of Mount Zion?
Yes.
That's Har. That's translated mount or mountain. And this is the word spelled Zion. And the word that we had put up here in Genesis 15, the first word here, Yod, Zadi, Vav. Wait a minute. I'm trying to read the letters that are invisible here. I think it was a Zadi, Vav, Aleph. Was that it? Or Zadi, Aleph, Vav or something? Anyway, I said that it meant to go out. Remember that?
Yes.
It also means to export or publish. Zadi Aleph. So Moshe was told to publish something. That's one way to read it. Which reading into, Abraham.
Wait.
I think Moshe also published, but that's another matter. Out of Zion's hills, salvation comes, right? Salvation is exported from, you could say, the hills of Zion, or you could say Harim would be mountains. What is that? What is Zion? What is Mount Zion? Eddie Chumney a few years ago did a talk, came to Portland, and he was addressing this matter of what is Zion, and he had at least a half a dozen different definitions, maybe more. So think of it. When you hear a song and the guy says, out of Zion's hills, salvation comes, he's probably quoting a verse. Does anybody happen to know what verse that is? We can look it up. These are the days of Elijah. Anyway, I'm not sure if it's in Ezekiel or some other book, but well, anyway.
Zion Hills, salvation comes.
Yeah. While we're looking at that, let me just say this. This whole study is based on that picture there regarding what I believe was Yahweh showing Moshe. You guys weren't here to hear the beginning of it. Let me address that real quick. Moshe saw the bush, which is the word spelled Hey, Samek, Nun, Hey. This is an S, N, that's pronounced as like Ha, and that's that expression again of or ha. Somebody told me it was actually pesne. That's the bush. And he saw the fire, aleph shin, and the bush wasn't consumed. And the word consume, I believe, is bet ayin resh. Double check. Page 79, bet ayin resh means to burn or consume, kindled, lighted, set on fire, remove, destroy, cleared, to become brutish. Do you know what it means in English to be referred to as a boor? Somebody who's boorish, you know what that means?
Wild,
Wild?
aggressive.
You remember?
Self-absorbed.
Self-absorbed. Remember in the Popeye cartoon, there was a guy named
Brutus.
Brutus, but they changed his name at one time. You remember what it was?
Pluto.
Bluto. Why was he? Who ever heard of a name Bluto? Why was he named Bluto? Anybody have a guess? Let me give you a clue. It's Hebrew.
Really?
Bet Lamed is where you might come up with the word bleh. It basically is foolish nonsense, just Babel. Bet is bet Lamed, Babel. Bet is the word that means gateway or entrance. And Bet Lamed is confusion or just everything's all messed up. Babel is could be read as the gateway to confusion. Babylon, mixture, where all the languages split apart. Uto would be a Vav Tav, would be a Bet Lamed Vav Blut O, which means he is Balut, or Bet Lamed Tav. Anyway, it's Hebrew. But the point is, somebody who is boorish is brutish, stupid, ignorant, and in Flemish, the word boer is actually a farmer. Now that's not to say that farmers are stupid, but farmers generally don't necessarily have to go to school. 3, 4 years old, get out in the field and start working. That's all you need to know. That's why in the olden days, there wasn't higher education for the peasants. It's not a derogatory word, it's the same thing, but it's the same as the Hebrew word bet ayin resh. So even the word boor, that's Flemish, and the word boor in English, comes from this word which means consumed. The fire and the bush were engaging, and it was not burning. Was not foolish, stupid, ignorant, and if you don't go to school, that makes you illiterate. If you're illiterate, it's the same as being consumed, destroyed. Some capacity of dealing with things isn't there. What I'm saying is that there was something about Moshe seeing this, and his boorishness was done away with. And according to the historians, there was no Semitic alphabet until 500 years later, after Moshe. But Moshe wrote the words of Elohim. And as I've been trying to show that every letter is the self-revelation of Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Elohim. Moshe, in Exodus 24:20, it says Moshe wrote, Ketub, all the words of Yahweh. You can't use Egyptian hieroglyphics, which are pictures of Egyptian deities, to write the Devarim of Yod, He, Vav, He. You need Yod, He, Vav, and He to be equal to the value that a Yod is a Creator's working hand. He is His revelation, His declaration, His enlightenment, which is the Torah. Vav is the Torah, the He made Vav, which is Yeshua, the sixth number Vav, the Torah in the flesh made the man, Mashiach, you might say. And then he said he'd send us the Ruach to lead us into the truth, which is Hey. So the Ruach is Hey. So you can read Yod Hey Vav Hey as the Creator, how He built nature. The Torah, where He enlightened us. Vav, the Mashiach, which is the man who regards the Torah of the Creator, and then the way he lives his life, conducting it as righteousness as the Ruach leads him, so that's Yod He Vav He. And if that's the words of Yahweh, you're not going to get that with hieroglyphics about various pantheon of Egyptian deities. And cuneiform, which according to the scholars was the only other written language at that time. Of course, in China, their language started about 2500 BC, which was the time of the Tower of Babel. And there is actually a really interesting YouTube video where a guy, he's in Singapore, a lady wearing a red dress is standing to his right, if you happen to see it, and he's talking about how they can go back and see the very original Chinese writings, and they are composed of characters which represent the Garden of Eden story, Noah's Ark story, and the Tower of Babel story. So that means whoever originated the Chinese language was one of those guys that had known or experienced those three things, and then at the Tower of Babel picked up and just went east. And that's all he had of the Bible stories, and then he started the Chinese Empire and the Chinese language. It's interesting. So whatever they were writing, all we have record of in the days of Abraham and right before and after Abraham, which was right around 2000 BC, is cuneiform coming from Sumer and Egyptian hieroglyphics. Now that's according to the scholars. So the point is, if the Aleph, according to the story in the alphabet, like this arrowhead that Yahweh says, as I intended to shoot towards Tav, the mark, the target, so you yoke up an ox and you send it towards the mark in the distance, so he pulls a line, a furrow, pulling the plow. The word ruach also means to expand or enlarge or give space. It's also interval. So the space and interval between Aleph and Tav is technically a ruach. It's not just wind or ventilation in the dictionary. So the ruach between Aleph and Tav is the other 20 letters. And if this came from Yahuwah himself, then that means it's Kadosh. So the alphabet is the Ruach HaKodesh. That's one way to read it. The alphabet is the Holy Spirit. That's one way to read it, if you work with translations. So if you realize that which he sent as his Ruach, and then is the Aleph, there was no letter Aleph. There was no alphabet. So Moshe somehow had to determine that. The Canaanites were speaking Hebrew, and if Hebrew was the original language, from before the flood, as Yahuwah was speaking to Adam, did Enoch really write a book? The book of Enoch says he did, but did it really come from before the flood? I don't know if it did. Was it written in Hebrew? Why can nobody find it? So, if it wasn't written, and there was no ancient Hebrew writing that's ever been found, the earliest they can find is 1200, maybe 1400. Moshe was 1500. They say that Canaanite miners working in Egypt really appreciated how the Egyptians would take a sphinx and write, "Oh Hathor, I love you, you're so pretty to me." And then they took that and also wrote it in Paleo-Hebrew. So somebody who's online on YouTube, some professional, said, "Oh, here's the evidence that the Canaanite miners must have said, wow, look what the Egyptians can do. They can write love letters to their goddess, so we want to do that too." So they invented the Hebrew alphabet so that they could write love letters to their goddess. It's impossible. If Moshe wrote all the words of Yahweh, and he is the guy in the Semitic alphabet, then Moshe would have had to write in Hebrew. But scholars will tell you that the Phoenicians invented the Paleo Hebrew alphabet in 1050 BC, a city called Byblos, which is in Lebanon. Byblos. That's where we get the word Bible, and in Spanish it's biblio is the word for book. Biblioteca is library. But if this was 1050 BC, how could Moshe write all the words of Yahweh 500 years earlier if there's no Semitic alphabet? What was he writing in? And then when Yahweh wrote with his finger on the tables of stone in Exodus 24, I think it's verse 12, if Moshe didn't apply his mind to sefer, to bean, to ponder these matters, he was certainly told to teach, and he had all the people coming up to him, and he would teach them the words of Elohim. But it wasn't until chapter 24, verse 12, where it says, Yahweh said, all the words that I have written. The first time the word ketub is used in the scripture is 24:4, second time 24:12, and then in chapter 31 of Exodus is where Yahweh hands him the tables of stone. So what did Moshe do? If Moshe was shown the fire and the bush, and he was not, the bush was not bar. If the word ash existed, he knew ash was fire. Nobody apparently had ever stopped to think, how do you, if you could put ash into some sort of scrawl, you have two components, eh and sh. Right? I mean, that's all there is to the word esh. But nobody apparently ever, for all these hundreds and thousands of years, ever stopped to think, write it. For some reason, the concept of writing apparently didn't even drop into anybody's head. The people in Sumer did, but they were using it mainly for counting and receipts, which was the ingenious, the arithmetic that we looked at, that het, shin, bet, that word. That's what cuneiform was used for. And then the Egyptian images of their deities, I read somewhere that the word par in Hebrew is bull. So if you draw a picture of a bull, you wouldn't say aleph, you wouldn't say tar, which is also, or sar, which is also bull or ox, you'd say par. The word par means bull. It's spelled in Hebrew peresh, but you'd say the word par. So if you would, if you wanted to say a word, now I forget the other half of what he had said, but it was something like if you would, if you wanted to say peretz, the word spelled etz, ayin zadi, is a tree. So if I wanted, this is how Egyptian hieroglyphics work. If I wanted to say paretz, which in Hebrew means breaker, somebody who breaks things, I'd draw a picture of a bull in a tree if it was using Hebrew sounds. So in other words, they're not letters of consonants, they're actually syllables. And so if you looked at a bull in a tree and you said, oh, that's par-etz. Oh, I know what par-etz is. Par-etz is somebody who breaks things. But that's not consonant letters like ish. So if Moshe was sitting there and he sees this bush, and as we said, he turned to conduct a scientific analysis. As we said the other day, the word mem, ayin, vav, dalet was the word scientification, and that's what he did. He turned to analyze. So if he knew Egyptian in cuneiform, you might see, just a series of lines, of wedge-shaped things. And apparently they had something to do with keeping a tally, or maybe it was more complicated sort of communication. I'm not sure, I haven't looked into it so much. But from what the historians say, these are the only two languages that exist. This could easily turn into Chinese, given some little more structure to the symbolism, but even in Chinese, this isn't exactly the Chinese letter or word. It might be good for me to learn that, but it's something like this. I know it's this word. It's something like and that's the word for grief or trouble. You can say, okay, now how do you, this is ancient Chinese. Chinese changed through time. So the Chinese took some symbol, some picture, and it's a concept. It's not vowels and consonants. This is the and again, this is probably not the picture, but it's something like this. This is a real thing. You know what that is? Trouble or grief. You know how they read that? Two women under one roof. True story. I didn't make that up. It's just, and it's not like, stop that attitude. It has nothing to do with you. That's the nature of what Yahweh designed. That's just what's going to happen. Just check with Jacob and Rachel and Leah. You know, sisters. They should be best of friends, right? Not going to happen. Anyway, but what I'm saying is, that's the way these other languages work. So for Moshe to say, I know that fire, he's looking at fire, he says, that's Esh. Now, the word bush is a Samic nun. If Abraham knew the Almighty as El Shaddai, so, Sh-da-I, there's at least three factors in Shaddai. So, here we know now that Shin is the monogram letter Sh, which stands for El Shaddai. So in Mezuzahs, there's a little letter Shin, like a fire, imprinted on it. So I have an advantage. I can look at the pictographs of these letters and say, well, the Aleph is the first letter which is silent, but it's expressed in all the other letters that come up and hit the target. So the Aleph Tav is the idea hitting the target. Like a point is an idea, traveling a line is another point hitting the target. So I could read this geometric pictogram like a constellation, a very simple constellation, but a dot, line, dot is, you have an idea, and it's directly connected to the manifestation of the idea. It's the same thing, a dot equals a dot. Now it's interesting that in Exodus 3, when Moshe said, who shall I say sent me? What did he say? Remember? That's English. That's not what he said. What did he really say? Sorry, I'm just kidding. It's translated, I am that I am, or I will be, or I will be. But that's not what he said. That he didn't say, I am that I am. Do you know how to spell that? What he said spelling-wise, but now remember, Moshe, if there's no spelling yet, Moshe is just hearing words. The way it's written is Aleph, Hey, Yod, Hey. Is silent, so it's Haya, Ehya, Ehya. Something like that. Asher, Ehya. It's repeated. And then he said, tell the leaders of Israel that Ehya sent you. This word is translated I am. Okay, so if this is I am or I will be, it means both. Why? That means this is the verb to exist. Hey yod hey or hey vav hey, or any combination of heys and yods and vavs is to exist. Just look in the dictionary, no matter how you spell them. So that means this prefix letter is first person self-referential. And it just so happens that the word Ehyeh means I am, the word Anochi means I am, the word Ani means I am, the word Ati or Oti means me and myself, I, this is mine. They all start with the letter Aleph. And in English, artist, architect, administrator, author, A words like that, starting with the letter A, have to do with the guy who thinks it up, initiates it, and gets it going. It's the same picture. So, if this is translated I am, how would you graphically represent existence? How would you do that if you're going to paint a picture? Here's a big empty page. If you wanted to draw a picture of something that exists, what's the most singular, unconfusing symbol that you can put there that represents I exist? Anybody? Put your beanies, your thinking caps on. If you're an artist, the singular, simplest, unencumbered graphic representation of the concept of simply, I exist. A dot. I agree. Really good. Brilliant.
Dots.
There it is. It exists. Will be, am, whatever it is, it's just there. Now, if this other ehyeh is also a dot, because he's telling you a sentence, it's interesting that the word asher is literally a straight line. So the word ehyeh, asher, ehyeh can literally be rendered as a dot, a straight line, and a dot. Graphically, simplistically. I am, asher, I am. What it is what I made it be. So now if you look at the spelling of ehyeh, aleph meaning the one who just is, aleph, the author, administrator, expresses what he intended, because aleph meaning I am or I will, there's this force of intent, like the ox, like the arrow that's launched. The energetic intent to produce, aleph, is expressed or evidenced by, now this letter yod is a working hand. Remember we drew it the other way like this excavator arm that reaches out and digs, or a robotic arm which grabs a hold. So this, I picture this as the creator, or the creation. So as the dot of I am had thought and intended, it's expressed or made manifest in what the creation reveals. So if you read this backwards, you could say, look at what is created. It is the expression of the intent of I am, who refers to himself as the aleph. So in that, if you want to know what that is, you want to prove it, it's a straight line of connection to that, which is this, which is the aleph and tav. So what I'm trying to show you is that you can cryptically read as a artistic graphic embedded within the language. It validates itself. You see that? Not just in my imagination. Do you see that, Stephanie? So the aleph tav being dot line dot is the ruach hakodesh, which is the expanse between that which limits the expanse, which is the beginning and the end, which is the aleph and tav, which is the same as ehyeh, asher, ehyeh, which is the same as ehyeh itself. What you see, they say what you see is what you get, but what you see is what he intended for you to get. So what is made evident to us is exactly what he wanted, because that's how he built it. So somehow in investigating the creation, the glory, the hey, the esteem, that's where we get the word starting with an E, the esteem of Elohim is evidenced in what he built, which is why, what's that video that you were suggesting we look at?
God of Wonders.
God of Wonders. A beautiful video to look up. God of Wonders. Now the other interesting thing about the word Asher is that it's where you get the word for Israel. Aleph is a prefix first person, Yod is a prefix third person, he will. Shin, Resh. Yashar is translated as Jasher, maybe an E, Jasher, or Yashar, that's the way it's pronounced. But if you put El, which is like the short form of Elohim used as God, they translate it as God, you get Yashar El. And the word Yashar literally means straight, smooth, level, correct, like building something plumb level square, to fill in the dips, to cut down the bumps in the road so you have a highway. The low road, the by road, scenic road, curves and bumps, but the highway, they literally bring in all kinds of resources of, like in Alaska, they brought in logs and rocks and floated and just put in the Alcan highway. But that's another Hebrew thing. Alcan is like absolute, you betcha, and the highway, and it cut across. Anyway, there's all these Hebrew words and concepts all over the place. But it literally means to build up the highway and preparing. I think he was also talking about preparing the way of the Lord. That's Yashar El. That's what Israel is supposed to do. Israel, the Kohen, the Kohen of the world, is supposed to point to the truth, make it beautiful, make it pleasing, make it understandable, which is Kaf He, combined with He Nun, Kohen, priest, Kaf He Nun. Hana is pleasing and gladly. So I'm just trying to show you, this is how you mess around with the words and try to figure out what's what. Anyway, so to know then that the Aleph through Tav is the covenant, you have to start there. You've got to know what the covenant is. In which case, if you determine what the factors are worth, then somebody had to come up with 22. Was that Moshe? Maybe. That's another story. We could look at Exodus 3 closer maybe tomorrow, and I can guess that it was probably Moshe because of how Exodus 3 was written. But the point is, if there's 23 or 22 and you get to the 21st letters, the Shin, representing El Shaddai's provision, overwhelming, champion, defender, then for Moshe to look at the fire and see, here's the original plan of the Creator, the Ehyeh, who wants to have a covenant with his people where his intention is to have this relationship and provide all these things. Then if Moshe somehow related those two sounds, eh and sh, to the word fire because of the concept fire, then he would have then determined to spell the word fire Aleph Shin. And the only way to get Aleph Shin is to know what Aleph means and Shin means. It means you need to invent the alphabet in order to spell the word. But there was no alphabet. So the way to get the alphabet, is what I'm saying, is to dissect Aleph and Shin, and then to dissect Hey, Samech, Nun, Hey, because Hey, as we said, is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Hey finds its value because it's the fifth letter, expressing the Bet, Gimel, Dalet of the Aleph. Samech is a geometric engineered structure. Nun is this concept, this vitality, this life, this spark, this insight, this Chai, Het Yod, is in the Nun. And then the way that looks or is expressed. So this isn't just bush. I mean, it is the word bush. But then to flip it backwards and say, Samech Nun is that which is lifted up. And Yeshua said, I'll draw all men to me. And did Canaanite miners design this language? In order to worship their goddess of a little sphinx idol? Impossible. Did Moshe do it? He would have had to have divine assistance if he did. And if you read in Exodus 3, there was no opportunity for him to do it standing there. He's looking at this, he goes to look at it, and all of a sudden there's this voice speaking to him or drawing him in, and then Moshe says, I can't speak, I'm not a man of words, I've got a heavy mouth. He says that I think 3 times. I'm not a man of words, I have a heavy mouth. But then Moshe also said in Exodus 4, he said, hey, speaking to Yahweh, speaking through the messenger of the bush, he says, by the hand of him, whoever you will send, go ahead and send him. By the hand of him, whoever you will send. What's orthography? What's writing? It's by the hand, send. So, in a way, Moshe was saying, hey, listen, you're the boss, you can do whatever you want, but I'm of a heavy mouth, please don't use me. It's out of my league. I just like feeling like a klutz trying to dance. I can't speak. And finally, Yahweh says, no, I'm calling Aaron to come out and meet you. He'll speak for you. Okay, but Moshe had already said and declared with his mouth, by the hand of him whom you will send, go ahead and send, go ahead and dispatch, go ahead and export. Was Moshe volunteering to be the guy that learned how to write the orthography of the letters? That's one way to read it. But I've never read any scholars describing the Hebrew alphabet this way. So that's what I'm just telling you. So, Stephanie, if you think I'm just making this stuff up, I am. But I'm trying to do it by looking at the letters, just so you know.
immediately perceiving me figuring it out.
Oh, that's okay.
I've heard her in college say that. I think they're making this up.
I'm just
then she
admitting
gets
that I'm just sitting here looking at the words and looking at the letters and trying to read into it, and this I'm just trying to show you what's there. So what I'm saying is that if Moshe put together the engineered orthography structure, Samik is like a tree shape, like a backbone with ribs, like a sukkah, and then the noon is like the living branches on the sukkah, so you can look at sukkah as being a noon and Samik. So, I put together these little decals. This is, it looks like that, but if you put this on an object, and you can press it on it and peel it off. Noon Samik. It says down at the bottom, Samik Kaf Tav 2018. So it's just like a little souvenir sticker. But Samik Kaf Tav is Sakat. Samik Kaf Hey is Sukkah. Samik Kaf Hey Vav Tav is the plural, which is Sukkot. But what's Samik Kaf Tav? In, I'm not sure where it is, I can't remember. It's one of the later prophets. Yahweh says, I will restore the tent of David. Somebody mentioned that the other day. Remember that? In fact, it was in the song. Reestablishing the tent of David. The word ohel, I think it's Aleph Hey Vav Lamed, is the word tent. The word Mishkan is also tent, but he uses the word sakat. But they translate it tent, because that's sukkah. So what I'm saying, I'm trying to show you another little problem with the language. If the word Samik Kaf Hey is sukkah, then Samik Kaf Vav Tav is Sukkot, which tents. What is Samik Kaf Tav? This is the word used that they translated tent. I will restore the tent, the habitation of David. And then as he said in the song, and what I've heard other people say, well, that's not David's house. That's not David's camp. It's not the tabernacle. The only other tent that David is ever responsible for is when the Ark of the Covenant was coming back from the Philistines. David grabbed the Ark of the Covenant, and instead of even putting it in the Mishkan with all the other stuff, he stuck it by itself right on the threshing floor of Onan, I think it was, because that's where this one plague stopped, where everybody's killed. And then he put a tent over it. And then he had musicians and singers 24 hours a day praising and worshiping. And that's known as the Sukkot of David. But it's actually more like a sukkah or a ohel. It's not a sukkot. But what's a sukkot?
There you are.
Look in the dictionary, it means listening. So why didn't they translate this as listening? I will raise up the listening of David. Doesn't make any sense. I will raise up the tent of David where there's praise and worship, like over the Ark of the Covenant, which Yahweh never told him to do. That was unauthorized. He authorized the Mishkan to Moshe, but he never authorized the Ohel over the Ark of the Covenant to David. But there was a whole book I read years ago where the guy says that David presumed to do that, but he found favor, and so the Christian worship service is the restored Ohel of David, or Sukkot of David. That's what the guy said. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But it's not the word Sukkot. I'm saying the word Sukkot is listening. That's actually written down here, Samik Kaf Tav 2018. So everybody's welcome to one of these if you want. And this is the one with the background. This is a peel-off thing. But the point is, what was the listening of David? Do you know what the word Dodi means?
My beloved.
Do you know how to analyze this? This is my yod suffix, right? Grabbing hand. And that's Dalet is a D, and the Vav is pronounced as a V. So, my DVD, my beloved DVD. I can't have it. David, Dod. If you look at Dalet, it's to walk together. You could say the door of your being is your heart. To walk together, heart to heart, hand in hand.
That
And,
means my uncle.
It's also the word for dad. It's where the English word dad, D-A-D. It's just the phonetic. Dodi is also uncle. But what I'm saying is if you put the two dads together, that's where you come up with that. So that's why they call it the Star of David, or that's also a Kabbalistic thing, male-female combined, and heart-to-heart thing. But what I'm saying is that in the analysis of the letters and the meanings of letters, you find all this stuff. So the way to know what Har Zion, by which flows salvation, and remember, if the word salvation is Zadikah, it's also, we could read it as our victory, but salvation is also Yeshua, so Yod, He, Vav, Shin, Ayin. Out of Zion's hill salvation comes. Is that the coming of the Messiah? Is that the return of Yeshua? Through the hills of Zion? Well, what are the hills of Zion? Does anybody want to venture a guess? What is it? What is Har Zion? How, Eddie Chumney, like I said, came up with a dozen things. How would you decipher, pictographically, paleolithically, how would you analyze the word Har Zion? Anything?
Sprouting new life.
Okay, here's a sprout of what? Life. There's a noon. New life that's coming out of the mem. What's Har? Now, just so you know, if you guys have been taking really good notes, I mentioned all this stuff earlier in other talks. Here, the word Har is mountain, but this also means to be pregnant, which is actually the word Hebrew, Ein Bet Resh, Heber, is the word Hebrew, which means to be pregnant also. And you could look at Ayin, which is to see, or the insight, and Bet Resh is where we get the word for pure. So you could say pure insight of that which is noticeable. What's noticeable? Well, this is the, or to put on display, or illuminate. And the Resh is the exalted man, the exalted letter, the one that's already risen from the dead. So there's a picture of Messiah. So the Hebrew, the pure inside of the Hebrew is to reveal who Messiah is. And Nun at the end is the one who's engaged in the action. Vav is this connector, kind of like this nail, or kind of like the Ehyeh. As I intended, so shall it be. And as we said before, Zadi Vav, which was a command or a precept or to say how to do something, to find out, it's the word for matzah or unleavened bread. So Zadi Yod, the Yod being the suffix, means my command or my law. Because the word Zadi Vav is also where you get the word for constitution, basically, and the precept in order as the commander has said. So, the one who does what I said to do is Zion. Out of Zion's hills, what are hills? One word for hill, like a sine wave, is that which is in the upswing, that which protrudes. So you could say, instead of being in the valleys, if we make known, make evident, like Har, declaring Messiah as the evident, which is the one who is doing his commandments. Out of that will come the salvation, the victory. Yeshua comes riding in on these the clouds, the billowing clouds. I mean, billowing clouds almost look like hills. What I'm saying is that as you start to study Paleo-Hebrew pictographically, this is all in your imagination. But we also said that the word Hetchin Bet meant imagination, and to picture and analyze and arithmetically calculate. It's not necessarily whimsical imagination, but the same whimsical imagination coupled with what he said. So here, like Nun, the spark of the whimsical imagination interfaced with the ordered structure, line upon line, of the Samic exactly what he said, taking the two hays, what he intended, and what it looks like if we do it, pulling that all together, you have the design of the Hebrew alphabet. Because that's what the Hebrew alphabet is. Eliminating ignorance and destruction. Not consumed is the way it's translated. But it can mean no longer illiterate. It's all how you translate the words. So if Moshe could see this, and he's no longer illiterate, he would have had to invented the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet pictographically in the 22-letter sequence according to the revelation of Yahweh at that time, somewhere between Exodus 3 and Exodus 24, verse 4, where he then wrote it. And as a confirmation, Yahweh says that he'd already written it, so somehow he was guiding him, and then for the Ten Commandments to show up 7 chapters later, where Yahweh himself wrote with these letters. There's the people have said, scholars have said, anthropological scientists have said, the origin of the Hebrew alphabet, the Semitic alphabet, is one of the greatest mysteries never solved. They have no idea. It's all conjecture. Somebody apparently just wrote a book claiming that Moshe got the alphabet on Mount Sinai. I haven't read the book. It was just brought to my attention a week ago. I should try to get it. I don't even have the name of it. They emailed me, I think. But the point is, I wonder if somebody else is onto the same thing. I don't know if they're looking at the Paleo-Hebrew. I don't know if they're looking at Exodus 3. But I'm saying all this stuff is in the letters, if you analyze the letters. Okay, so here, we're going to jump to another page. One of the scariest, two of the scariest verses anywhere in the Bible. Anybody want to venture a guess? Scariest verses.
I no longer know you, or you never knew you? Yeah, I never knew.
Why did he never know him?
They were lawless.
They were lawless. And the word law is Torah. It's translated iniquity, but iniquity is translated as not doing what he said. So it's, if you're not keeping his commands, Zadi, you're lawless, which is iniquity, and he says, get out of here, and never knew you. So it's like, wow, if we're not doing this, if we're not of Zion, if we're not his... Oh, okay, what's the other scary verse? 10 bridesmaids.
Oh, yeah.
10 young ladies received invitation. 10 young ladies prepared themselves. 10 young ladies had hope, and they had the flame of desire in their heart. And 10 young ladies were geared up and ready, and waiting and waiting and waiting. It wasn't their fault. He delayed. It was his fault. But then when the bridegroom comes, the blow of the trumpets, when they wake up, it's like, whoa! They didn't have oil. 5 did, 5 didn't. So the 5 that didn't have the oil says, can we have some of your oil? Now, what was the oil? Because, as it goes on, the 5 that didn't have the oil were told to go buy some. If they went to go buy it, when they came back, he had already showed up, taken the 5 that had it, went to the door, closed and locked the door, and they were banging on the outside just like people who missed getting on Noah's Ark. And they said, come on, let us in, we're back with it. He said, I don't know, you guys. You're outside of any of my regard at this moment. Why? It wasn't even their fault. They believed they had brought the offer into their heart, were hoping, were planning, had readied themselves, but they missed something. They missed having the oil. Okay, so what's the oil? Torah? The law? So go buy some and bring it back. How do you go buy some Torah and bring it back within a few minutes so you can come in? I'm just saying, now we're going to, this mystery oil is actually spelled Shemin, is the word oil, and Shemini Atzeret, if you add a yod in here, Shemini is the number 8, but it's the same word, it's just got a yod put in there. And this yod here is the word my. So you could read Shemini as my oil. And atzeret, atzar means a stoppage or to cease from work. So he's saying, on this 8th day of this festival, stop one more time, just one more delay, stop, don't work, have a get together. That's what Shemini Atzeret literally means. 8 and oil. It also, as oil, means stout, robust, and lubricate. You go get your car lubricated and oiled and they get it all functioning good. Same word. Olive oil, same word. What is the oil? Is it learning the Torah? Go get oiled up learning the Torah? I've heard it said that it was the Holy Spirit. But how is the Holy Spirit transferred from one to another? Is it the laying on of hands? Why didn't the 5 that had the Holy Spirit lay hands on, and so they all 10 had enough oil and go in? So what's the oil? Anybody want to take a guess? I'll tell you what. How would you read what is Shin Mem Nun if you were to read it pictographically?
She knew noon.
What's that?
I think they were lukewarm. They weren't on fire.
Well, they couldn't light the fire yet because they were out of oil.
Well, they weren't being vigilant. If they had been being vigilant, they wouldn't have been caught without oil.
Okay, but if they had been vigilant, they wouldn't have been caught without oil. But if he had come earlier, maybe they would have all had enough oil. He didn't go into that. And so, I'm just trying to analyze the word. So what do you see? And maybe this is wrong, but I'm just analyzing the word shemen. What do you see in the word shemen? Shin, mem, nun. How would you interpret? See, everything we're doing, I'm just trying to give you the experience of analyzing words, which we were going to do, if we have any time left, with the Lord's Prayer here. I'm just going to run through some words so you would know what this is. Instead of seeing a bunch of gibberish, you'd know how to analyze it. That was the purpose of having this here. So I'm just trying to give you one last little chance with the word shemen, because that's coming up either tonight or tomorrow. And if it relates to the 5 and the 10 bridesmaids, virgins parable, then it's really important.
Well, Shem can be name or character, and Shemi would be my character.
So this part here is my name, or fame, or character. Okay, what else? What is Mem Nun? How do you pronounce Mem Nun? Amy? What is the English equivalent of this letter?
M.
And what's the English equivalent of that letter?
M.
Okay, what if you put those two together? What does it sound like? Or mana. Mana. If you give the A, that's how you spell the word manna. They said they called it manna because they said, what is this? Where did it come from? What is this stuff? Manna means, what is this? Where did it come from? There's a New Testament story. Nicodemus shows up at night. He's from the Sanhedrin. He's the big shots that Yeshua's been hassling the whole time. And he says, hey, listen, we know you come from Elohim. No question. So he knows that he was the guy that gimmeled from Aleph. But there's something confusing. There was something that didn't make any sense. The word spelled Bet Gimel Dalet means to be concealed, cloaked, the reason, the identity. And he says, Mem Nun? Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? So in reading John 3, in the story, he's coming there. He says, we got Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet Hey, and you're this man, Vav. There's some kind of reason. And we got Mem Nun, Mana, but we're asking Mem Nun. So there's this other thing, that there's this gap. Were they processing the Aleph Bet sequence? Maybe. Is that what those guys do in their cloistered secret studies? Maybe, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, if the answer to everything is in the Aleph Bet, then we could take John chapter 3 and overlay it to the matrix grid, like the Samic, this vertical and the horizontal, like the, there's a vertical aspect of the horizontal lines, that's Samic. How do you take John chapter 3? How do you take the stories of the parables? How do you take the whole thing and organize it? To do that, to put it in order and row, entry, ark, that's all the word spelled Ayin Resh Kaf, Eric, as in Ericology. That's the word. That's what they're doing. That's the way to study. The whole thing keeps going back on itself. And it's like the whole thing is this closed loop of always referring to the spelling of words. So if Memnoon means why or where or who or what, it's a big question of what. Okay, if this is a big question of what, Mana, or where is it from? What has that got to do with my name, fame, or character? Yep.
I'm going to make.
It's like it's saying it's fruit of his name. Because the noon is it's like a fruit.
The fruit that comes out of the mem.
Comes out of
Okay,
the
so
mem.
what she just did is she looked back at the alphabetic sequence and says, noon is identity, gets its shem, its identity, because it's before Samic and after mem. Noon. So noon jumps out of mem, but yet the Samic, which is like a vine with branches, is supposed to bear fruit, which is the ayin, but she's saying that noon is the fruit. But noon, kind of like this flame, if I draw a picture of a menorah, which is a Samic structure, if I draw flames, I could say, well, those flames are like fruit. You know, the eye of the candle, you know, the little. But I could say, well, wait a minute, this is an energized candelabra. If I turn this on, it's nooning. As a matter of fact, the word for nar, noon resh, or noon aleph vav resh. Aleph vav resh is light. The shortened phonetic is nar. And put a mem means the place, manara, where light shines from. So noon resh is like this head or this fixture which is emanating. So the energized emanation is actually noon. So if noon then can be read as a lit menorah, noon Samic, then a Samic noon is the structure by which the fruit has a place to be launched from,
His name.
which is his name. So somehow in the shemen, this oil is not necessarily the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. It might be our doing as per his name, fame, character. Us bearing the fruit in character with him. His character is testified to by Ayin Dalet, testimony and witness, Leviticus 23, the Moedim, Mem Vav, the place of witness and testimony. So how do you know name, fame, and character? If you want to prove name, fame, or character, you do it in court with a couple witnesses. So if this guy, the Yod Hey Vav Hey, this man, the Vav, has two witnesses, this Hey and that Hey. And Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, just like Moshe lifted up the serpent, so Yeshua is the living one, according to the structure of the Torah, because he did the fruit, he bore the fruit of according to the Shem of his father, and he had the witness of the Ruach, and he had the witness of the Torah. So there is a picture of, there's Yeshua as nooning the Shem, having the oil, being the oil, light, being the light of the Shem. The word at is the word for tree. The word zar is the word, like in Mitzrayim, is distress. Well, that means to stop. I don't know if it's an assembly. I'm not sure if it means something else. Well, let me ask one more thing. Does anybody have any question to this? I don't want to lose anybody at this point. Does anybody have anything to add or question regarding any of this here?
So did we answer the question of what the oil is?
Put it into your words. How would you summarize everything we just talked about?
Obedience to Torah.
Shemini.
Obedience to Torah. Does somebody else have something else?
Faith.
Excuse me?
For faith.
Faith?
Can you purchase it? They waited, the bridegroom waited so long to come that half of them lost faith. They ran out of oil and they had to go and see something else happen or obtain something else to have that faith again. And, you know, where does the blessing come from? We have to believe that it comes from his name because he is who he is, and that's faith. Just believing that it's going to come from him. So where from and my name, the blessing comes from my name.
Okay, so what you're saying is not just, I believe, but you're identifying the subject of the belief.
This is a rabbit trail, you can shoot it down, but what I think of is in the book of Revelation, Yeshua says to one of the churches, I counsel you to buy from me pure gold,
Fine.
or something along the lines. Is that the same word that's being used when it says buy?
The word buy is the word shekel, which is actually silver, unless there's another word. And gold is the word zava, Zion bet, hey, I think it is, zav. Silver and gold. In fact, you might remember on one of the videos, the candy bar Abba Zaba. You know that one has gold and black checkers. Zaba is gold, Abba is father, so it's Hebrew for father's gold.
Huh. Never seen that thing.
Yeah, it's a candy bar from long ago. They still have it. Black and white checkers, like little gold flakes.
So we're going to have to get a hold of some
Some Abba Zaba. It's the kind of thing that if you bite into it, it'll rip your teeth apart because it's like
Oh.
it'll provide silver for the dentist, you know.
What about oil? Shemini is oil or
Yeah.
deed? Isn't that Hebrew for joy?
Simcha is joy, but what are you saying is?
Deed. Oil of like deeds. His
Deed, as
like
in
his
actions?
actions, yes, like so his Shema. Hear, do,
Well,
sort of that.
so here's what another thing that she's saying. If I took the same word shin mem nun, right? Shin mem nun. So this nun is an action of putting his name into effect. If I take shin mem ayin, could be said, well, understand what his name is all about, but that's the word that means to hear, which is just like the word to listen, which is the word Sukkot, which I had mentioned before. So you could say that sitting in a sukkah, just sit and listen. Maybe there's a voice coming through the branches, the leaves, the crickets. Just sit in the sukkah and listen. Or sit in the sukkah and have the worship music on, if you'd like. There's something about just sitting there and listening to him. Shin Mem Ayin. If you look at Shin Mem Resh, Shamar, that's the word to watch, keep guard, put into practice, remove the dregs like sweeping the floor, or it's actually removing the dregs like making tea or coffee and filtering out the sediment. This is the first order of business. Adam and Hula were told to guard, watch, keep guard the garden. That was the word Shomer. But it's the same word Shem with a third letter being different. So one way to study would be to take a basic root word like Shem and then try Shin Mem Aleph, Shin Mem Bet, Shin Mem Gimel. A bunch of them don't even spell words. You won't even find them. But if they are the words, write them down and just contemplate, analyze, look at them. Okay, the dictionary says that the word atzaret means to retain or restrain. Okay, don't worry. The 8th day, my oil, restrain yourself, restrict. But it also means keep track. To keep track of is to make sure you're not going off the track. It also means to hinder, shut up or closed or arrested. To hold a festive gathering means you're not running away, you're holding back and having a festive gathering as if you've been arrested. You've been arrested in his name. Shemini Atzeret. By the order of the sheriff of Nottingham, by order of the county cop, by the order of the Shem Yahuwah, Emperor of the heavens, withhold, restrain, stop, stay on the track one more day. We're anxious to get out of here. Whoa, Nelly, stay right there. Those are all pictures. Yeah.
Page is that?
What page is 481? That's there. It also means rule. Stay in the line, on the track, like a railroad track. Ruler, possessor of restraint. It's used in the phrase, heir to the throne. Heir to the throne? Why is that word even on here? Suddenly, if you stay on the track, you can be an heir to the throne. That's something in the dictionary. Then you have to, gosh, where do they get that? Of uncertain origin, possibly derived from a different word. Abundant, it's related to an Arabic word meaning abundant or opulent or livelihood. Restraint, coercion, poverty, weakness, curfew. It means curfew. Yahweh on Shemini Atzeret is imposing his curfew. Gosh, do we have to? Wait a minute. What if that's how we get the oil? Now do we have to? If he said, listen, regard my name on Shemini Atzeret, that's how you get my oil. Wouldn't that be better than going shopping and trying to buy oil so that you can get in and having missed it? But you take a guess how many people actually stop on Shemini Atzeret and don't just cut out early. Why? When I went to the Torah study back in 2001, 2002, the fellow said, he's been keeping the festivals for 20 years and he really has no idea what Shemini Atzeret is all about. It's the last great day. Did he maybe not read the dictionary? Festive assembly, solemn assembly, a derivative to restrain, keep back, stop. So you can do with it what you will. I'm just trying to say before we hit, well, boy, your Shemini Atzeret's about to start any minute, right? There you are. Stay in that chair. Don't hit the road. And I'm going to choose to believe that that's the acquisition of Yahuwah's personal oil, so that by doing so, you will not be one of the five with the door slammed in your face. But why didn't he ever tell us where to get the oil? He told us that the five who went to go get their oil got either the wrong oil or it was too late. Is it keeping Torah? How do you go out and buy keeping Torah? How do you go out and buy the Holy Spirit? Do you have to go get some tapes from Monty Judah and Bill Cloud and listen to him real fast and then come running in? Is it learning his stuff? Or is it just hold yourself back one more day when he said to?
It's lamp oil.
Lamp oil.
It could be olive oil.
Could be olive oil.
Oil of joy.
Oil of joy and gladness. Sameach. Simcha. Which is one more day of celebrating Sukkot.
Rejoicing. And so Shemini Atzeret is like the day of fullness of joy. It's like just so much.
And it just so happens to be the 22nd day of the 7th month. And you've got 7 branched candlestick, and it said there was 3 cups on each of the 6 branches, and 4 in the middle makes 22. Divided by 7 branches is 3.14, which is like, the letter pi, for people who have a regard for that. But that's like a fully lit menorah with 22 wicks. That's like the alphabet letters divided by the pattern of the Mishkan, the 7 phases of the big white fence, the barbecue grill, the laver, and then the menorah, table, showbread, altar of incense, and Ark of the Covenant. The 7 phases of the Mishkan pattern, dividing up the 22 letters, is pi, which is the relationship of a radius to the circumference. Hey, that's letter Kof, which is the hope and expectation set before us, line upon line, which is the the ascension and seeing him come back in that great expectation, which is tuning the guitar string to just the right frequency for the sake of healing, because he did say it was through the healing, the frequency, the herbs, the leaves. It all has to do with the quantum physics, the matrix, the consciousness of everything he built, believing it, realizing that it's all a system put to order. There's no funny business, there's no witchcraft, there's no sorcery. It's just his name. All this is his name. And the word for meanie, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You remember that? Meeny? That means counting. So shemen also means, besides oil and 8, it means counting. And it's the same word as erict, as in erectology, which means appraise and assess the value. It's the exact same definition. We didn't look it up, but it's in there. Count, consider the cost, consider the value, and then hold yourself back one more day, comprehending his name, and then Malachi 3:16, those who do that, those who ponder his name and talk with one another, he will show on the day that he reveals his greatest treasure. Why, it's the names of those who have been put in the book right in front of him on his coffee table, and he'll open up and show the entire universe. The distinction between those who regard his name, his day, his ways, and those who have other things to do. So, the Ten Commandments. Not the Ten Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, excuse me. So if you know how to read this by recognizing the letters, you can just drop in the English. So the first couple days ago, I said, well, if you take the Paleo and write in the modern, and then write in the English, and then write out the English words, which is, as Sally did here, right? Mm-hmm. And she has it on a card that you got online.
Yeah, you got it online.
You can punch this up and find it online, but you won't find the Paleo written online. But here, Abinu. So just real quick, Abenu, well, that's our Father. Oh, wait a minute. Aleph means first person I will. Bet Yod could be read as in me. Bet Yod Nun is being, which is the word for think, ponder, consider, measure, evaluate, which is also the word for shemen, appraise value, which is also the word for ayin rish kaf, which is put together, which is also the word for het shin bet, which is to arithmetically calculate and devise this really ingenious invention. That's all this stuff. And the vav could be read, is it, I will being it. I will ponder it and consider and put it all together into an apparatus. Kind of like this kind of apparatus, like that. So for you to sit there and try to wrap your mind around it, what's it? The fact that he's our Father, and that Aleph Bet is a desire, and that a Bet Nun, because Yod and Vav is a wild card, Bet Nun is son. So the word Eben, which is stone, is like a good son, and Bet Nun is all, Bet Nun Hey is to construct, construction, building construction. So you could say, as a good son would put into format, building, the Father's desire, the Father's dream. And for Yeshua to say, I only do what I see my Father doing, and say what I hear him saying, and the voice from heaven on 2 occasions saying, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And that word for well pleased, or the desire, is the ratzon. It's here somewhere. Here.
Yeah.
Ratzon, your desire. That's what a good son is. So to simply say the words, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Abenu. Think about that. The same way for the word to think, to look, to consider, to ponder. Hey bet yod tet. The revealed, bet in the container. You might say reach in to the full basket. That's the word for ponder, consider, look, meditate, The word meditate is also Haggah, which means the spelling of words. Rudder, helm, steering wheel. Pondering, meditating. Ponder and meditate on the steering of navigating your life by the spelling of words. That's what he said to do. So as I said in the very beginning, the spelling of words is the sport of the heavens. It's Yahweh's national game. This is his stuff, about him. That's a band. We don't have the time to do every letter, every word, but Sally and Jesse are going to make a video, and hopefully I get to be involved to some degree,
Yes.
about her reading these words individually enough that someone can ponder them. Jesse Running Bear, when he was here, he was playing guitar to a tune that he wrote regarding the Lord's Prayer. The Tefillah of Abenu, the prayer of our Father. And there was too much background noise, so we recorded it the other day, and it didn't come out as a good enough product. And we recorded it yesterday, but we're going to redo it a little bit. But just so you know, hopefully pretty soon, contact Jesse, and Stephanie's trying to help with the internet link. But it's our intention to do a little video piece as a little piece of art, put it up on the internet of this board, these words, spoken slowly enough that you could look at the spelling of the words and contemplate with Jesse playing some music that he's composed in the background.
It's really good.
So hopefully that will be soon. Anyway, would you like to, Sally, just
Read it.
as we end here, if anybody else wants to personally try to analyze any one of these words, you're welcome to use my dictionary. It's got some pages missing. You're welcome to look it up. This we want to keep kind of pristine so that we can film it. But we can talk about that on some other occasion. But in the interest of timing here, we'll just have her read it as she read it with Jesse playing the guitar. So, does anybody have a musical instrument they want to do in the background here? No? Okay, then she'll just read.
So do you know what it is in English? Avinu Shabashma'im Yit Kadesh Shimka. That's our Father who's in heaven, sanctified be your name. Tavo Malkutka Ye Ase Retzion Ka Kevashmaim Ken Ba'aretz. That's your will come your kingdom, and will be done, your will as it is in heaven, on earth. Et lechem kukenu ten lanu hayom. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
That's right.
Yes. And this is the bread. Give us our ordinance today. And then Uselach lanu al kata enu. And this is, and forgive us our sins. Kefi Shesolakim Gam Anaknu Lakot Im Lanu. And that is as we forgive also those who sin against us. Ve'al Tevi Enu de mi Señor ki im kotzeinu mi hara. And that's, and do not bring us into the hands of a test, but deliver us from the evil. Ki laka ha mamalaka ve hage gura ve hatif eret let o me o lamin. Hallelujah. Amen. This is for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory ever and ever. Hallelujah. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So, these are really nice to have just for yourselves, to have to read it and to sort of meditate with it and learn how to say it. That's how I learned it. I read it over and over and over again until it got to a point where I could say it without having to look at it so often. You know, it sort of becomes walking and talking with it. So it's how you do it. And these are on a website called thewordinhebrew.com, and they're really affordable, under $10. And there's the Lord's Prayer, there's Psalm 23, there's Jeremiah 29:11. She has several scriptures done in Hebrew with the phonetic sounding too, and the English translation, so you can learn it because it shows you the phonetic sound to say it. So you can say that while you're looking at the Hebrew words and get it there. It's really special. And this woman, I watched her testimony. She's from Israel, and has a relationship with Messiah, and she has a whole wonderful testimony. So it's encouraging to look at. Her website shows a link to her testimony, so you can watch it.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about the study at all?
Well, I was going to show you that this word right here when you were talking.
Zion.
So I was looking at the Zadi and the Noon being bookends, so to speak, of the word. And Zadi is righteousness, and Noon is like it's an impartation, and it's also like a fish coming up out of water. It's like a fruit. And what's in the middle of this is a Yod Vav. And I was looking at this, and I got something from this. The middle two letters, the Yod Vav, is like a hand connecting. So it's a working hand connecting. It's like his working hand connecting with it is righteousness, and the fruit is within it, so it's coming from that. So it's like this fruit coming from his working hand, and it's like an injection with his hand. Did anybody else get that, maybe?
Well,
Maybe?
you know, just
A little
say
bit?
the
Eric,
same thing that you're talking about. He talked about in the coming kingdom that we turn our spears into pruning hooks, right? So even though he said, well, that's not a pruning hook, it's a fish hook. It's like, no, it's a picture type. It's also a pruning hook. So the pruning hook, and the other interesting thing is, there's in Jeff Benner's Paleo, ancient Hebrew, the Noon is a sprout and the Zadi is a sprout. It's virtually the same letter. They both are letters of sprouts. One reason I don't use them is because they can be confused, and so I try to use this other lettering font. But, so, both those letters are two aspects of the exact same thing, just like what you're talking about. And as we spout righteousness, then what sprouts is the
but
new...
it's by his hand. Righteousness only comes from him. So it's his hand, and the Vav is the connection, which is Messiah. So by his own hand, for righteousness, because it's like that's the flag that's coming along. So it's for righteousness that his hand is injecting or connecting us, and the noon is the fruit of it. So it's surely to be seen, because there will be fruit, and that noon is this fruit that's.
Which is to say that everything we're doing is not for nothing. It all is a most assuredly promise to have a result, to have a sprout, to have an impact, to make a difference. And I'm absolutely convinced this will change the world. The fact that we are observing and doing and reading and learning his matzot, his mem zadi vatav, his instructions, his commands, because we choose to observe them and are trying to figure out what he said, to do them and take them to heart, that will change the world. There was, one of the things we mentioned in the very beginning regarding the quantum physics thing is that there's experiments, and maybe some people don't know, so I'll just add this much more. Physicists, these are legitimate professionals, worldwide, world-class scientists, the likes of Einstein and Newton and those guys, have conducted experiments where they found if you, say, shoot a particle of light at a target, it hits a certain target in a certain way. But if you watch it, it'll go a different target a different way, just for the sake of observing it. So that's to say that you can have a mechanical apparatus set up where, like a rifle shoots a single photon and it hits a certain target. But if you observe it, the photons being shot are going to behave differently. Why? They've also, well, I can give you a list of experiments. There's no point. You can look that up. Here's the thing. For us to look at the Nun Samek, the Samek Nun, Yeshua lifted up. Moshe lifting up the serpentine shape on the pole changes the universe. Our observance of his rules, that's like really not such a good thing there. The observance of his instructions changes everything, just as much as sticking a green pine needle branch in a raging fire and sending smoke into the room. Thank you for the illustration, Louis. Anyway, that's what this is about. So, anybody else? Shalom.
Shalom.